Are you appointed by God? If the answer is no, I'm not appointed by God, then thank you very much. I don't want to hear about it, because you don't have the right to talk in the name of God.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello and welcome again to another episode of Where is God Today? You are tuned in to the Mahdi Has Appeared TV. We're live and there's a phone number on screen. Obviously you can contact us, and I hope that you engage on today's subject. Today's subject is kind of connected to the last two subjects, or two episodes that we covered. The latest video of Sadiq, from him is peace, in that being the punishment that's engulfing the world, and the advice and guidance that Sadiq, from him is peace, gave in that video to declare the allegiances to God publicly on the doors, the way it happened at the time of Moses, with making it obvious that, like, to the higher powers, the powers of the Almighty God, that this household contains a believer. So, in context of those two previous episodes, today we are covering an often asked question that usually doesn't really get a satisfying enough answer. And it's usually a question that is posed by atheists or genuine, like, seekers of justice and truth who have a connection to God but don't find the answers they're looking for in mainstream religion. So the question is, why does God allow suffering in the world? If we can bring up our first picture, this is the thumbnail of the video that Sadiq, from him is peace, released a long time ago. This video is a very short video, so it's in your interest to actually give it a bit of time. Thumbnail says, why God allows suffering, and it's in the playlist, as you can see on the little picture there. It's in the playlist of the School of Divine Mysteries. If we can bring up the second image, that says in it the name of the episode itself. Why does God allow suffering in the world? And again, this is available on the School of Divine Mysteries playlist, which is on the Mahdi Has Appeared YouTube channel. This is the platform of Sadiq, from him is peace, Abdullah Hashem, and yeah, I would recommend it to any human being who wants to know more. Okay, so there is a lot of suffering in the world. There is a lot of misery. There is a lot of pain. There's a lot of angst out there, and it's not particularly addressed in a satisfying way where you've got answers that make sense. Nobody has any kind of solution. Nobody can give an indication of when the suffering will end. And it is, like I said earlier, a question that atheists think justifies their stance, justifies their opinion that there is no God. And rightly so, the atheist mindset that a merciful God would not allow suffering, as in an idealist's head, suffering shouldn't exist if God was indeed merciful and just. And that's a fair enough, remark. It's a fair enough opinion to have. Having said that, this world does contain suffering. It does, it is full of darkness. It is a world of complete and utter corruption, all those attributes that we would consider to be negative. They're all out there, and anyone with a sort of compassionate sort of attitude or outlook on life will ponder on that question. Why does it happen? Why is it there? Why does it even exist? Surely the world, as far as human development goes and where we are as a human race, surely there is no need for it. There is no reason why it should be there. And that's, again, a fair enough remark. It's a fair enough kind of assessment. But it's there. And anywhere you look, there's no tangible reason for it. There's no logical or rational, acceptable explanation for it. So, why does it happen? I think it's probably a good time to bring up our first clip. So let's go to that.
And I think that this question that I have heard and received from many people is not a new question, and it's been a question that was asked to the prophets and the messengers and the imams when they spoke about the end times and what was going to happen in this day and age that we're living in today. And we have the companions of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, for example, in one narration, they were around the Imam, and the Imam was telling them that, all of these things that were going to happen from there being murders, and there being chaos, and there being anarchy, and there's wars and rumors of wars, and all of these horrific things to the point that the people would pass by a grave and wish that it was them that was dead. And then the companions would ask about the divine just state, and they would ask about the Mahdi. And the answer would be given to them that this matter that your necks are reaching out to, this thing that you are looking forward to, will not be until 2/3 of the people perish. And then the companions said, 2/3 of the people perish, well then what will remain after that? And the Imam responds and says, will you not be pleased to know that you will be from the remaining third? And so we get from this answer that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam are telling the companions that the believers are going to survive these atrocities and these horrible times.
That's interesting, isn't it? This question isn't new. This question has been posed to various prophets and messengers throughout time. It was alluded to in the conversation we just heard, where the prophet, the Ahlul Bayt referred to the end times with an indication of what's to come in terms of murder, suffering, wars, great calamities, whether it's the earthquakes, whether it's the, I keep referring to it, the hurricanes and tsunamis and all sorts. And the interesting part there, or the shocking part, is that 2/3 of the people perish. That's 2 in 3 people. That's quite eye-opening, really. You're looking at only 1 in 3 people remaining after everything's settled, once the dust, is back on the ground. That's quite an image. You're looking at, if the world had 6 billion people there, you'd only have 2 billion left. But we have 8 billion people. So we're looking at, 2.8 billion? Nope, 2.4 billion. Thereabouts. 2.6 billion. So the point is, this is all coming. We've only just scratched the surface with what we're seeing right now in terms of war, in terms of like the plagues and so on. So, the glad tiding that we can take from this was that those who are supporters and believers in the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, those who were the Shia of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, and I don't mean the Shia of today who beat themselves or proclaim themselves to be like the supporters of the Ahlul Bayt. We've proven that they have no connection before. I'm referring to the true Shia, the ones deserving of that rank, the true supporters, the ones who know the rights of the family of Muhammad, peace be upon them, and will not accept any violation of those rights by anyone, regardless of what their claim is. Those Shia are amongst the 1/3 that remain. They're amongst the ones who will not perish, amongst the 2/3 of the planet. So it's definitely coming. It's a prophecy. It's a prophecy that's been repeated various times by various prophets and messengers, and it has relevance to today because the signs are beginning to scatter, they're dropping onto us like the beads from a necklace that's been broken. They're increasing in frequency. We're seeing them transpire before our very eyes at a very rapid rate now. They were much, much more sparse. They were much less frequent. So, what's going on? Why? Obviously there's a reason for it. Obviously God is merciful, God is just. What could actually be the reason for all of this? This 14-minute video that I've indicated you should really go and investigate and watch yourselves, because it does contain a very concise answer, a very, very eye-opening kind of conclusion. So, let's bring up our second clip and see where this goes.
Before the relief occurs, that the people of the earth will suffer 2 types of death, a red death and a white death. And the white death is plague, and the red death is killing, war, murder.
Yeah.
And the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam were explicit in their saying that in their narrations, that one of the reasons why the punishment must happen on the earth is so that the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt and the enemies of the Shia are destroyed. And even the Sufyani in his appearance and his coming, and he's a villainous character that we're going to do an episode about in the end times, and the arch nemesis of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, and the Qa'im. The Sufyani, in the hadith, they state that before he even turns towards the believers, he spends the majority of his reign killing all of the enemies of the Shia. And so, of course, it's a horrible condition that's taking place. But one of the explanations that are given by God and His messengers and His imams for why this condition must be and why humanity must endure this suffering is because there are a lot of people whom are enemies of the Imam, who would object to the Imam, who would reject the Imam. And it is all of these bad people that are going to fall and die in the process of these wars and these calamities that are going to befall mankind.
That was interesting again. So, you've got the enemies of the Shia being wiped out by various calamities. Now, there are other narrations which refer to that white death and red death. The white death, as Abba Sadiq from him his peace pointed out, is the death from disease and plagues and illness, essentially. And what's shocking is obviously over the last 4 years, we've seen what we've never seen before in history. We saw an illness that literally stopped the world in its tracks. The whole world came to a standstill with coronavirus. Oil, which has been the subject of many, many wars, was being given away with money, as in the oil companies paid you to take oil away. That's never happened in history. But it happened. And we have world governments like the US and the United Kingdom and various other European nations vying or sort of competing to produce a vaccine which would prevent the onset of coronavirus at such a mass scale. Now, I'm not going to say anything about the vaccines. I'm not going to say anything about how it all transpired. But there's a lot of rumors going around about these so-called solutions. So, obviously, coronavirus was a plague. It was a form of white death. And we're seeing now many other diseases that are shaking up the world. They're making I've said this before, the medical kind of community around the world is definitely taking notice and definitely trying to make noise about this. But again, it's never been seen. We alluded to again in another previous episode, that they are discovering viruses that have been frozen for thousands of years. Abba Sadiq, from him his peace, said that there will be viruses or illnesses that are not from this planet. So when you take all that into consideration, since 2020, we've seen a spike in new recordings or newly documented illnesses that definitely fit the bill. They definitely kind of tie in with these narrations, these, prophecies, these warnings. These are signs for those who have understanding to take notice of and pay attention and recognize. So, we also have the Red Death, and that was killing. The Red Death being killing, okay, so for the last 25 years, we've seen mass killings through war. And these wars don't seem to be quietening down. They're definitely more destructive. They're definitely more technologically advanced, and there's a lot going on that would, if you understood what was being said in the different narrations and prophecies and put them all together, there's a lot to pay attention to. There's a lot to sit up and recognize as a definite sign. The question is, are you recognizing the signs? Are you noticing what's going on around you? If you aren't, then you're missing the chance to save yourself. And that's upsetting to think about, but at the same time, it is obviously foretold. How can 2/3 of the human population perish if everyone's noticing the signs and taking heed? So the choice you have is, where do you place yourself? Do you want to perish in ignorance, or do you want to save yourself through knowledge, understanding? And it is quite a significant detail that connects it all to the believers. And it is very interesting that the Sufyani was mentioned as being responsible for being involved in the wars and the killings of many people who I'd say have a role to play, and the Sufyani doesn't pay attention to the believers until a significant part has passed. Now, the key thing here, the important thing to pay attention to, is how it connects to the suffering that we're seeing in the world, and how it ties in with the White Death and the Red Death. The Red Death, as we said, is killing. Now, killing takes various forms, doesn't it? I'm going to bring up the next clip, but before I do, the suffering is definitely around us, and it is something that is going to continue increasing. And with the way things, from what we've seen in the past, in terms of the world wars and how food prices and the scarcity of food affected people, and what we're seeing today in terms of world hunger and the amount of people dying from starvation on a daily basis, there's a lot worse coming. A lot. Anyway, let's bring up our next clip.
And so we find out from this that a second reason why the suffering is allowed to take place and why God remains silent until the appointed time is because it was destiny that so many of God's chosen, beloved saints must die in order that God's fury and wrath boil against the enemies and against the tyrants and against the perpetrators of these great injustices against humanity. And so when all those who were written that they were supposed to be martyrs get martyred, then they join the ranks of John the Baptist, and they join the ranks of the disciples of Jesus Christ, and they join the ranks of the companions of Muhammad and the imams and all the prophets and the messengers. When the number is complete, then the relief happens and God gives permission that the punishment and the flood of the end times, so to speak, come down upon the people of the earth.
That's another reason, but nobody's ever put it in that context. The wrath of God can only take shape or apply to the planet once all those who are destined to die in order for the wrath of God to reach that point have died or have been killed. Now, that's a pivotal piece of information. That context, that understanding that God's wrath isn't just, for the sake of sin. It's because of the abuse of His authority. All those people who represent God, when they are murdered, then obviously the act of killing them is an unforgivable and wrath-inducing act. So God's anger doesn't basically what's going on is human beings are testing God's anger by the murder of the prophets and messengers and those who were sent by God in order to represent Him. We saw that the family of Muhammad, peace be upon him, were massacred and betrayed and very badly treated. So that context of that understanding of how God's anger operates is pretty vital to this whole equation, this whole story. The human history and human culture, that has to change, and God allows it to continue unabated until He can't tolerate this what's the word I'm looking for? Crossing of the line. Basically God cannot tolerate this kind of, I wouldn't even call it it's literally an abuse. It's abuse of God and what God represents, the representation of God on earth, to the point where it's intolerable. And there's no excuse for it. There's no justification for it. But we see it throughout history. We saw how, you know, these individuals were martyred. Like, they were, like, literally the people just killed them. And like if you had your own family being killed, obviously you're going to be angry about it. You're going to be upset. And this is essentially God's family. They're the ones who God empowered, gave them the authority to speak on his behalf. That's quite the thought. It's quite the picture painted there. The destiny of the destiny which results in the punishment is slowly, like, we're slowly running to it, and we're like, it's just a matter of it running its course in order that the relief comes after the punishment is served. So the question is, who are the people who represent God, and how do we recognize them and protect them from the injustice that they experience in order that we may avoid incurring the wrath of God? But it's not like, that's not the purpose we have. It's not our, like, we're not here to protect them. We're here to serve them, learn from them, and obey them so that we may elevate. And this has always been the message that consistently was repeated throughout time, but for some reason people turn their backs on. It's usually like the ego and the self. And what do we see in the world today in terms of prevalence? The ego and the self. Let's bring up our next clip.
Wow.
So there's bad people that must die, that's a reason.
Yeah.
And there's good people that must die, and that is also a reason.
Wow.
And the third and final reason why all of this is allowed to take place is because the narrations state that the condition of the people today is the same as it was in the time of the days of Noah. And this comparison is drawn in the hadiths and also in the Bible, the New Testament. And when we look at the condition of the people in the time of Noah, they were getting married, they were having festivities, they were working and gathering money, but they were also described as a people that would pull their shirts over their faces in order to ignore the message of the messenger. And they would put their fingers in their ear to block hearing, to block themselves from hearing the messenger. And they were people that mocked the messenger and abused the messenger and said that you are just a people, you're just a man who's followed by, you know, the lowest in society. Why would we follow you? And so it necessitates that God allows man to have a taste of that which his arms and his hands put forward, so that man be brought to his knees and people be put in a state where they are crying out to God and crying out to the heavens, all of them asking that God sends a relief, that God sends the Mahdi, that God sends Jesus. Every nation crying that God sends their Savior. And it's at that point, after the evil are gone, and after those who are at the highest levels of faith are also martyred and gone, and the rest of the people are brought down to their knees and humbled and have lost faith in every other system and every other ruler except for the ruler that's chosen by God, it is at that point that the relief happens.
Yeah.
Okay, so that couldn't be better explained. You've got the good people who are supposed to die being taken back. You've got the bad people who are supposed to die, again, being killed or dying. And then you've got the third reason for the suffering is the rejection of the man from God and the hedonistic life which the people choose to live, and therefore justify the punishment befalling them in the same context as what happened with Noah, peace be upon him. So, all of that happening leads us to this point where the relief can only happen once it's all past. And the people have to reach that point where they're fed up with any other system of rule apart from the divinely appointed system of rule. If they rejected that, they're like, there would be no point in their existence. It's quite a thought. It's very, very poignant. It's very just. It's fair. God doesn't want to force anything on anyone. God allows you to taste what you have bore with your own hands. And it's only once you've reached this unacceptable state that you reach that point where enough's enough. Let's see where this takes us now. Let's go to our final clip.
And so really, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not change what is with the people until they change what is with their own selves. And so it's up to humanity when they can stop the suffering, or when the suffering stops, it's up to them. It's in their hands. It is them that are experiencing not evil that's come down from God. It's only God allowing the evil that man has brought forth to fall down upon their own selves.
Yeah. Wow.
They're the ones who elected these people. They're the ones who are paying the taxes to these people. They're the ones that are wearing the uniforms and going out to serve these people that are not appointed by God in these governments. They're the ones that are clapping and being rallied up at rallies and voting and electing madmen that are destroying the planet and that are killing everything that's good on it.
Know thy master. So all of it has reason. Nothing's by coincidence. We all have a choice. If you're supporting someone and you don't know their true nature, you don't know what they're themselves serving, then your destiny is tied in with theirs. Okay, let's put it like this. If you have an individual who asked for your support and then turned out to be a murderer, you would be complicit in their crimes. Their murdering would fall on your hands too. Okay, let's say, give a different example. You've been asked to drive a car for someone, but you don't know what you're driving them for. So they asked you to drive them to the bank. They come out from the bank and you're told to drive back to somewhere. And there's police chasing you. Obviously, now that the police are chasing you, you're being complicit in a bank robbery. So, knowing where you're going, knowing who you're giving support to, obviously ties in with how your destiny plays out. So in this context, you've got the people you're electing, the people you're working for, the people you're serving, whether you're in the military or police or wherever. They control your destiny. You really have some serious questions to ask. And not doing so is saying, my destiny isn't that important to me. That's an idiot's kind of philosophy. That's a stupid way to live your life. So if you're going out and voting for this person or that person, the first question you should be asking yourself is, who does this person serve? Now, put that aside. If you're listening to someone who's guiding you on your life or your faith, and you're unsure of what this person serves, then you've got some serious reflection to be getting on with. The point is, know who you're serving, investigate, and question. The suffering is real, and it's fated. There's no escaping it. But God doesn't punish a believer. Like, their suffering is minimal. You as a human being cannot have more than one master. Your allegiance in who you choose to serve has to bear fruit, has to have a sort of significance on your destiny. And this is the whole point in this call. This call is for your salvation. This message, this channel, all of it is here to serve you, to let you become the best version of yourself. I hope this episode has been helpful to you, and I hope it's explained why there is suffering in the world, because it's very clear. You've been watching Where is God Today, and please join us tomorrow where we will be discussing other important issues, and please check WIGT ? On YouTube for our previous episodes. Where is God Today? Thank you very much for joining me today. God bless you all, and stay strong.
Are you appointed by God? If the answer is no, I'm not appointed by God, then thank you very much. I don't want to hear about it, because you don't have the right to talk in the name of God.